But with that, actually, it looks like we're ready to hop into our round 4 and see these casters lay out their set. Let's go ahead and hop in.
Absolutely. Cannot wait to see what these two have brought to the table today. Looks like they're just waiting for the all clear here. They're going to take a look at their openings and see if they need to mull. Anything in particular you're hoping to see out of this match, Caleb?
I want to see as little Galaxies cast as possible.
That's fair.
As a water caster, I don't like them. It looks like these players have kept their opening hands, and FullFrontage casting out a Foamy in defense position with a set back row.
Now, we've seen a couple of different decks that could be on that Foamy. Foamy has kind of become a real popular option as of late. With that said, it looks like, I believe that's a Specteris coming down. The glare is a little high for that, but I believe that is a Specteris, which is like the perfect answer to a Foamy. Like being able to run it over and cancel out the effect. FullFrontage does have that Shield of Achilles though to kind of clean up that Specteris, but now he has to know the Specteris is in the future. That Foamy is not going to be getting a whole lot of value here.
It certainly gives FullFrontage the reason to go ahead and ascend over this Foamy if you have a 2-drop in hand. I do want to point out the expansion for the Shield of Achilles while we resolve this Ass Rabbit FullFrontage displayed. The expansion for Shield was an Earth Spirit and a Frost Spirit, which is very strange to me and could indicate a lot of different things. You only want to be expending this early things that you have a lot of. So that indicates to me that there's quite a few Frost Spirits in the Spirit deck potentially, and quite a few Earth Spirits. So it kind of gives us some intel on what might be in this caster's deck. But I honestly don't really know what that might mean. It might mean that we're on an Argo deck for Scythe of Demeter to heal back that Earth.
It may be, but there's also the option, I know I do it a lot with my personal Spirit deck tech outs, is that you'll you'll pre-do your Spirit deck to handle things that are in your sideboard specifically that may not be useful in your main board. For example, Frost for Cryoblast if you're not choosing to main deck it. And at that point, you might as well expend it early as you're not going to need it through the game. But it looks like he's going to swap the Foamy to attack and swing in for a damage here as we're going to move forward into the next turn. It looks like Sean is going to, in fact, redevelop that Specteris that we already knew was there. And FullFrontage with no back row, that Foamy is a sitting duck.
Yeah, bye-bye Foamy, no effect as it was suppressed. Make sure, folks, to declare your Specteris effects because very well, that could have gone very differently. FullFrontage, though, going to go and cast out Ed and Eddie here, trying to swap this Specteris to defense position and hit over it here. The question is, are those back row live? It looks like they are. There's a Gorgon's Gaze from Sean that's going to prevent that attack from connecting.
I will say I find that very interesting that with the Gorgon's Gaze coming down on the attack deck rather than on the effect. But I guess at that point, FullFrontage doesn't really have something that he can swap to attack over the spec, so it makes sense. And speaking of Cryoblast, there is the Cryoblast to clean up the Eddy. Wasn't long for this world, so now it's just a rabbit in a dream there for FullFrontage. Oh, I guess the back row too. Is that a Giraflora that I'm seeing come down here?
It looks like a reverse stellar mudlet to me.
Oh, my mistake.
We're swapping the Ass Rabbit to attack position here.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. That is the mudlet. I can't really see through the glare too well, but the mudlet is a perfect answer for the rabbit here. Going to swap it up, but the PTA coming out of FullFrontage as well to clean up that mudlet, so it's not going to stick around. Also makes it to where the Spect has to walk over the rabbit, but with no back row remaining, it's not really too big of an ask. With that said, though, Sean will be passing turn with no back row here into FullFrontage's completely empty board. You have to imagine FullFrontage is looking to make some kind of a push here and now.
Yeah, FullFrontage has got to have it at this point. They have, looks like, 4 cards in hand, and this Specteris has put in a lot of work for Sean. And FullFrontage is responding with a Specteris of their own here. Question is, are we crashing? Or are we using some sort? Oh, we're passing.
We're passing. Just going to try to hold down with Specteris here. Kind of an interesting play, to say the least. But now we know that Sean is on those Cryoblasts, so you have to imagine the Specteris could potentially eat another Cryoblast out of Sean if he has that available. It looks like we got another, I think that's another Mudlet here.
That one That one is Rumba
Is
Gem?
it Rama? Is it Rama Gem? I am
Tilt my
sorry.
head sideways to see it.
Yeah, it is. It is in fact
No, that's
Rama
Elichick.
Gem.
That's Elichick. That's Elichick.
Oh,
That is
Elichick?
Elichick from Tournament Pack 1 that is searching that out.
I
The
apologize.
unity out there.
Looks like the Elichick there is going to be picking up Demeter from the deck by the looks of it. And with that said, though, Sean now having another Elestral on board that can kind of contest board presence, you have to imagine that he's probably thinking about crashing those Spectruses.
Yeah, with the Zeus coming out means you don't even need to crash. You can just go ahead and minus the Specterus out. And that's why just passing on Specterus maybe isn't the right move, because if you're not able to out your opponent's Specterus, without crashing, they very well could see the card that lets them do it to you. And so removing that board presence, I think, probably was the right option from FullFrontage.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking the effective 5 off the board definitely would have been quite valuable in that regard. So Sean down a Spirit, but definitely up on their board presence there with with both an Elichick and a Specterus. You have to imagine that this is going to start snowballing out of control. If FullFrontage can't put forward any kind of advantage this turn, but looks like advantage he will have, especially with that Viserys coming down here and going to attempt to clean up the Elichick with no back row. Viserys is going to go through completely uncontested and actually get off the second copy out of deck.
It's a rough spot for FullFrontage to be in, because Viserys does nothing into Specterus.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be a dangerous position for FullFrontage, as he needs to still put an Earth Spirit under it. And because if Sean has anything that is a 3 attack or above, actually, if Sean has a card that has an attack stat on it that is not 0, he outs this. Viserys from his end, though, will allow him to exert so much advantage, as Specterus clears over the attack position Viserys, and the Viserys from Sean's end takes out the defense position Viserys. So Sean is just gonna generate so much advantage here.
Yeah, that is just going to be absolutely rough. The advantage is just going to snowball from this stage. Sean now having 3 Elestrals on the board compared to FullFrontage's absolute nothing. And on top of that, FullFrontage and Sean have actually very similar spirit counts, to where the board presence really is what's going to matter at the end of this.
It looks like FullFrontage might actually be only at 7 here as well, so it might be at a disadvantage to Sean at this point. FullFrontage setting a rune, the first one I believe that has been set since like turn 1 or 2.
Yeah. I have to imagine that FullFrontage is probably, if he plays it, probably looking at a Tsunami as the only way to kind of stall out this board. With that said, it looks like, I believe that's a Galaxy coming down.
It's a Galaxy from Artist Collect. But this is not going to do it, is the thing. This just doesn't do it.
Yeah, unfortunate. He's going to be able to clean up the defense position, Visk, but the other one is still a 5 attacker here. And here comes Demeter on top of that. So Demeter and Zeus occupying the board here. Absolutely killer. Followed by another Earth Elestral.
It's an Equilynx.
It's an, oh no. That back row that might have been FullFrontage's saving grace is unfortunately just not going to cut it, as Specterus is just going to be able to eat that Galaxy here. And it looks like Sean might be considering, no, he's just going to go for the 1. I was going to say he might be looking at trying to push advantage, but now the Gorgon's Gaze coming out, I'd have to imagine onto the Specterus to block the 2 damage push. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter there, because the back row is already going to get sniped out. He's already going to take the 2 damage from it. All in all, this is looking like it's just spinning absolutely out of control. There goes the Specterus walking over the Galaxy, suppressing its attack swap, and now the remaining Equilynx being able to get in for 1. It's basically, it's do or die time. I don't even know what FullFrontage could top deck here to get back into this.
Yeah, the best option would have been something like Tsunami, but Equilynx clears that, and I think FullFrontage might just be out of it at this point. While the spirits are equal in Spirit deck, Sean has a sum of 6 spirits on board, and that is a lot. There's a lot to have to deal with on FullFrontage's end with only 2 cards in hand. I don't think there's a 2-card combination in the game that does it right here other than Double Eruption.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, Double Eruption would be quite hilarious. It's actually 3 cards in hand. Looks like he's going for a Drakid here. It looks like Full Frontage might be on Draking after all. Which,
hey, my fault.
Yeah, but the Drakid, I would have to imagine, is taking one of the many 4s on the board. But unfortunately, almost every single one of these Elestrals buffs itself up by its own effect, meaning Draking does not take those stats with it. Looks like it doesn't even matter. Sean is going to shield the Drakid back to hand, and with Full Frontage only being on 3 spirits in Spirit Deck, this is game. It's a foregone conclusion, and yet there's the scoop out of Full Frontage. Looks like they're still shuffling up here, but looks like Sean probably is definitely in the better position. Obviously, being up a game in these kind of matches is always really, really important. And now knowing that his opponent is potentially on Draking into a deck that I don't know if we ever saw a Galaxy. We obviously mostly just saw Earths. But if Sean is playing any kind of Galaxies, even in the sideboard, I'd imagine they probably just came in.
On Full Frontage, starting off the game, getting their choice of first or second, playing a Stellar Spectaris and 2 face downs. That is a gorgeous card. I love the Stellar Spectaris. It's so incredible.
Absolutely incredible card here. See here, once again coming down here, it looks like it's going to be the Eddy to put that Spectaris into defense. You would imagine, knowing how that Spectaris went in the last game, you'd have to imagine that Full Frontage probably wants to keep the Spectaris up for as long as possible, and down comes the Shield of Achilles to do just that.
And I'm going to once again point out the spirits expended for Shield of Achilles were again Earth and Frost. That might indicate Full Frontage did not side into Cryoblasts.
That is very interesting for sure, but unfortunately, Shield of Achilles kind of is just the delay of the inevitable, as Eddy can just come down again next turn and once again put the Spectaris back into defense to clean it up. Looks like a Mustation is coming down here and is immediately going to eat the PTA out of Sean. Once again, the PTA dropping onto a Mustation specifically is very interesting, as it would normally drop the Mustation to a 0-6, but it does look like Full Frontage did expend in order to bump that the Mustation back up to a 6-0 for the turn. So Sean's going to be taking 2 damage off those swings and then paying an additional to take out that Mustation. That is a very valuable crab.
Yeah, it's a very interesting proposition, whether you expend to swap the stats on a Mustation or you don't, because essentially you're just going 1-for-1 with your opponent on spirits. But if you're trying to thin out your opponent's spirit deck as quick as possible, as we all should be, it's usually the correct decision to try and do that. And it looks like an Equilinx is played from Sean's end. I believe that's the tournament pack one we saw earlier. And Full Frontage is going to respond with a Dense Fog, maybe a little preemptive, as there was no Nexus Bank on field from Sean, and so maybe could wait until that commitment was made of the spirits on board before Dense Fogging. But regardless, the outcome will be the same here of buffing that Equilinx up to a 7, which will hit over the 5 attack Spectaris.
Yeah, I have to imagine there that Dense Fogging that preemptively had to have obviously it kind of ended up the same in the end, as you said, but realistically you would have to imagine that you'd want to wait until you see a Nexus Bank hit the board, as Equilinx can't use its effect before you would get an opportunity to Dense Fog later. Ambrosia coming down, paying with the Zaptor to get back, I believe it was 2 Lunar and a Water. Yeah,
that's the Draking heal right there.
Yeah, I definitely think that Full Frontage is completely dropping the veil on his particular deck, and definitely following that up with a Drakid does no favors in that regard. Drakid's going to be able to swap with the Equilinx on the attack stats, definitely going to be able to win that combat if Sean doesn't have an answer, and it looks like Altar of Stars is the answer here. Paying out a Spirit Deck to Nexus from the Demeter to put that Drakid into defense mode. And now Full Frontage once again kind of being put on the back foot here, as Equilinx now has additional Spirit that he can Nexus to take out that back row and just completely clean up the board.
Oh, a set PTA from FullFrontage popped by the Echo Links into an Ass Rabbit, which you wish you could be PTAing right now.
Oh,
But
that is unfortunate.
yeah, this is going to be a really big turn from Sean here. Getting to look at the top 3 cards of their deck, add 1 to hand, shuffle the rest back into the deck, and swing out for a damage plus clearing this Drakid. And I don't think FullFrontage is on very many cards at this point. There just hasn't been a lot of cards that have been drawn.
I can't tell, but
played.
I think FullFrontage is at 0 in hand.
That's my assumption, unless his hands are resting on top of his hand of cards. I believe that he is.
Yeah, he's out.
Cards.
Oh, this is not a good position to be in, especially with that funny bunny. The Ash Rabbit's just going to continue to gain advantage the longer it sits on the board. And you have to imagine that Sean has some way to protect it between those 2 cards in the back row.
Yeah, and this 1 card for turn from FullFrontage might have to be big. Now, the reality is that FullFrontage...
Oh, the resting! That's a big one!
Yeah, that's pretty important for taking out that Echo Links. The only one legal in Sean's deck, and so won't have to deal with that card ever again unless somehow they're playing Rise from the Ashes, which they probably aren't. But it looks like we may have expended a draw here to
Absolutely.
get that card in hand.
No cards in hand, you have to take the expended draw to try and get some way back into the game. Sean is going to commit a second Astrabbit here. That is absolutely killer, as these bunnies are just going to keep gaining advantage the longer they sit on the board. And on top of that, that actually opens up the option, though it would sacrifice a rabbit for altar plays here that are also going to get searches out. Because now you have the Nexus Bank of Thunder on the board to use with it. Though it's not a very common play, it is an option here. Sean's gonna get in for the 2 damage here to FullFrontage. FullFrontage is absolutely bleeding spirits at this point, even though Sean went down very heavy. FullFrontage has to find a way back into this, and a Galaxy, I believe, might be his way back in.
Yeah, Galaxy is going to start putting up a lot of pressure. No runes cast from Sean here. Swinging over the Ass Rabbit. That Ass Rabbit that's in position is likely to go to defense, but it looked like Sean was about to play out a Spectaris. There comes the Lunar Spirit for it, and that answers the Galaxy. And Sean just continually taking advantage of the board states that FullFrontage is putting up, dealing with them, taking them apart, and leaving FullFrontage on nothing. This is very difficult from FullFrontage's perspective because Sean just has all the answers.
And not only does Sean have all the answers, but that massive spirit differential that FullFrontage had in his favor for a while there has been whittled down to only 2. And I have to imagine that only having 2 cards in hand, it's going to be very difficult to claw his way back in at this stage.
Yeah, there's very little in terms of card combinations that could do it. And Rock and Hard Places was what I was just about to say. You target the Spectaris and the Demeter, and I think the decision is always Spectaris, and it looks like that's exactly what just happened. But
that does also mean, I was gonna say that does also mean that the hand is not Drakid or Eddie, but it does look like the Galaxy follow-up, making that Spectaris pop even more valuable. Galaxy going to be able to put up some play into this rabbit. We already know that the first 2 cards there on Sean's back row were not really too useful for dealing with Galaxy before when he attacked over rabbit. So you have to imagine that something's going to change here. And there's the Shield of Achilles, not particularly ideal out of Sean, but something to help delay the whale from just absolutely taking over the game.
I think it's a good move from Sean here, because it enables him to swing through for damage, even if he is not able to out Galaxy with something like a Spectaris. And so this is just going to allow him to generate.
Is that the Ardbud? Am I seeing that? That is Ardbud searching for Spectaris. Is that our first Ardbud of the day?
Yeah, we have not seen Ardbud yet.
Absolutely incredible card out of Shattered Stars Sagittarius here, able to search for any insectoid 1 cost on cast, or not just on cast, on receive. So Sean going to be able to put in 2 damage here to FullFrontage, and now guaranteed has the Spectaris in hand to follow up into FullFrontage's whale if he decides to redevelop that.
Yeah, this has put FullFrontage in a horrible position because Sean can just re-enchant and search the third Specteris. And like dealing with a Specteris is fine because you might have to deal with a second one, probably not a third. But this is guaranteeing Sean is seeing all the Specterises if this Art Bud isn't dealt with, and there are 3 counter runes set in that back line, meaning it's so unlikely that this Art Bud doesn't stick around another turn.
And you have to imagine that Sean also has Altar of Stars in that back line. Having shown it earlier in the match, Ardbud being able to get another, well, it looks like it's going to be Altar of, is that Altar? No, Shield of Achilles. You are correct. I am sorry. Shield of Achilles to bounce the whale back, and that unfortunately is going to be all she wrote. Sean taking game 2 and taking the match with a swift 2-0 against FullFrontage here.